Welcome to Narrative Responsibility, a podcast about examining the meta-story of your life, how well it is serving you, and how to change it for the better. I'm Elena Wolf, relationship coach and life alignment mentor, and this is this week's New Perspective. Hi there! I'm so glad you're here today. This is episode 49. My kink is being understood. I've been thinking a lot lately about what it means to be understood, to have another person truly enter your phenomenological world. That is, the world of your experiences and how you interface with any given now moment through your filters of past experiences, beliefs and fears and expectations that derived from them. Your cognitive preferences and how you have learned to work with them, your idiosyncratic database of knowledge about the world, your unique lexicon of your native language and what you understand each word of it to mean, all of the things that you notice or don't notice about the world around you, and all the things your body feels and how you interpret those sensations. I think too often we use words to describe our experience and assume the other person understands. We think we were perfectly clear because we know what we meant, we know what the words we used mean to us, and we know all the context around what we described. And all too often, when we are the receiver, we believe we understand what the other person means because we know how we would mean those words and what we would be experiencing if we described that event in such a way. Sometimes those two experiences are similar enough that a shared understanding of reality has been achieved, but often they're wildly different. What one person thought they communicated was not the same as what the other person took away. I have had 2 conversations within the last 6 weeks or so with different male friends about aspects of this. And I don't know if the fact that they were men socialized in the ways that men are typically socialized makes a difference or not, but I suspect it might, and that's why I mention the gender. One was a conversation, or possibly it even went as far as being a debate, about the word understand itself and what it means in practice. My friend said that you can understand something cognitively, but then go experience it and realize that, in fact, it was nothing like you had projected. I said, well, then that means you didn't actually understand it. You just understood an imaginary construct that wasn't what the real thing actually is. He said, no, that's what understanding is. A mental model, an analytic or logic-based sequence that you can follow and make predictions with. If the embodied experience is different, that's not about understanding, but rather embodiment. We had to agree to disagree. I could not disagree more. To me, the word understand means that you actually grasp how something works in such a way that more information about it isn't going to change your understanding of it. For example, the rain cycle. I understand that water from rivers and oceans is absorbed into the air, and then temperature or pressure changes will cause it to coalesce into drops of water and fall from the sky back to the earth, thus re-entering the rivers and the oceans. If I go sit by the ocean and feel the humidity in the air and then catch a summer rain, my understanding of the water cycle does not change. The embodied experience of it was not significantly different from the model I learned. But if I think I understand what, say, shamanic trance is like, and then I go give it a try and discover it's different from what I thought, then I did not understand it to begin with. If before I gave birth to my son, I thought I understood how I would feel, only to have a totally different experience emerge the first time I saw him, that means I did not actually understand how becoming a mother would feel. Those admissions are totally fine for me to make. While I do admittedly place pretty high egoic value on understanding and being right and being competent and being smart, I place more value on integrating the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, such as, hey, you were actually wrong about this. I am also comfortable with the idea that there are experiences we cannot understand before we live them. That, in fact, what makes life itself worth living is the way we respond differently to experiences than how we expected. If we could successfully imagine everything we could ever do, honestly, why even bother to stay alive? There would be nothing left to experience. The fact is, we can sometimes not understand things even when we can use words to describe them or make a mental projection of them. I maintain that if the experience of a thing changes your understanding, then you did not understand it before. To me, understanding is not a purely mental, analytical, cognitive thing, but an experiential thing. But maybe I am the one using the word wrong, and my friend is right. Maybe my understanding of the word understanding is a non-standard usage according to the common lexicon of the English language. Maybe all this time, the nearly 43 years of linguistic saturation I have had with English, maybe for all of that time I have applied a subtly wrong meaning to that word and thus misunderstood to a smaller or larger extent every sentence I have ever encountered, whether it was spoken, written, or sung that utilized the word understand or any of its derivatives. And in turn, maybe I miscommunicated to the person receiving my words, whether they were spoken or written, what I had actually intended to say when I used words in the understand family. That's possible. But now you know at least how I mean the word understand, and every time I use it going forward that you hear, you will know what I mean. The other conversation I was having was with two other INT personality types. This is pulling a little bit of Myers-Briggs into the mix. One was an INTJ like me, and one was an INTP. Again, both of them men. And both of them admitted that when they are reading nonfiction, and also sometimes when they are reading fiction, they will skim for the novel information or the general perspective that's being shared, and then say, okay, I get it. I don't have to read every word that was written. And they move on with, some knowledge of what it contained, but confident that they got enough. They got the gist. This floored me. Like I am not above getting partway into a book and feeling like, okay, this is not offering me anything, and so I'll skim the rest or just not finishing it. I don't force myself to read everything I start, whether we're talking fiction or nonfiction. With nonfiction, if there's no information or if the argument being made is just riddled with logical fallacies, I'm not getting a good return for the coin of my time. I'm not going to finish it. And if you don't know what I mean by the coin of my time, go see the episode titled Life in an Attention Economy. But for me, part of the process of vetting information and deciding whether I want to integrate it into the sort of trellis structure of things that I, quote, know, part of my vetting process for information that I'm getting from another person is looking at the receipts. How did they come to this idea in the first place? What have they studied and what have they experienced? What did they resist in the process of arriving at this conclusion? And what changed their mind? These are the nuances that get lost in skimming, in looking only for the high-level understanding, the understanding as my friend would use the word, and missing the more embodied understanding that I think really encompasses not just the idea, but the context in which it was considered and evaluated and tested. My friends also both prefer to write in a more pared down, minimal style than I do. We've talked about this multiple times. Other people can fill in the blanks the same way I can when I read. I'm saving them time by not making them read all those extra words. I will never not make you read the extra words because, again, the way I conceptualize what I am trying to do when I'm writing is to express my very nuanced, embodied experience. I do use a lot of words to do that, and sometimes I will repeat points or belabor certain examples because I'm trying to convey my actual experience, that maybe I came at this same thought 15 different ways. I can probably sum that up into like 3 or 5, but you still need all of those 3 or all of those 5 to understand how I got to where I am. That is me offering my receipts. It's where an idea came from, how I've interacted with it, the different ways I've looked at it. Or if I'm trying to explain my point of view to someone, I will include the context and the relevant pieces of my backstory to help them understand what I am experiencing. I try not to include needless information, but my minimum necessary for understanding is often expansive because I am aiming to convey a deeper understanding than just that most basic outline in someone else's mind. I don't want them to have the unshaded cartoonish pencil drawing of an apple appear in their mind. I want the photorealistic image and the taste of crisp, sweet tartness in their mouth. This desire to understand and to make myself understood undoubtedly stems from a childhood and adolescence of being incomprehensible to the people around me. I wasn't necessarily being viewed negatively for my way of thinking and perceiving and feeling and creating so much as simply being othered. I was unique, anomalous, a puzzle, but also one that nobody around me wanted to solve. I decided before I was 12 that I wanted to be a writer, and part of my desire was to be able to create a shared experience of mind with other people. I spent years honing my ability to write. Countless hours of painstaking trial and error, learning how to use words to say what I was trying to say in such a way that the other person might actually receive my intended message. This practice came with a lot of torturous examinations of my own thought processes. In order to accurately express something, you have to understand the thing to begin with. If I am trying to convey my thoughts, I have to understand what my thoughts are. Clear thinking equals clear writing. And since I tend to think in complexities where everything touches and is touched by everything else, this process of understanding my thinking also came with a baptism by fire on editorializing. How to pick out what is salient, relevant, and necessary to conveying my point without obscuring it in extra details or caveats. I had to learn how to write poetry in order to express emotion and how I experience emotion, because sometimes meaningful description is just impossible, and the only thing that will actually convey the experience is analogy or storytelling. I said in my last episode about Murderbot that novels are the best vehicle we have for entering the mind of another person. It's our best technology for really understanding how they perceive the world. And a big part of how that happens is all those extra words that layer in the details of cognition and perception and feeling. Sometimes more really is more. I saw a great Tumblr post recently about the phenomena of consciousness and our individual experiences of it. Quote, "If we could read minds, I still don't think we'd understand them. I've spoken to people who think in images, who have to translate each thought into words before they communicate. And I think entirely in words, laid out across the void inside my mind. My father's thinking is three-dimensional, concepts structured in ways that are incredibly difficult to translate into words. How would that look to me if I could see into it? How do I perceive a thought that my mind cannot contain by the nature of its construction? We all speak a private language to ourselves, and we are all always translating so we can speak to each other. End quote. And this idea really resonates for me. If somehow I could drop into someone else's mind, I would not necessarily be able to make sense of their experience, because I would not have had the years or decades of interacting with the world through the filter of their own input systems, their associative awarenesses, their modes of comprehension. The neural network that they have developed painstakingly and revised over and over and over again with every experience they have had for the entire span of their life is going to be a different neural network than the one in my mind. They might connect to parts of their brain on a continual basis that I access twice a year. So if I were to be dropped into their mind, it might be as alien as if I were dropped into the mind of a cephalopod or an actual, alien. And I just feel like this kind of metaphoric example drives home the point that sometimes we need the expanded version and not the shorthand to actually understand. Or whatever word, actually means what I use the word understand to mean. I remember being like 10 and wondering if everyone actually saw colors in the same way. Or if what I see as green, what I label green, someone else sees as the color I call purple. Because from the perspective of how we acquire language and the concepts it describes, if there is a consistent naming of that spectrum of light, however your mind interprets it, then your personal experience of that color will be what you have been taught to call it. And how would any of us ever know what someone else thinks green or purple means? We wouldn't. There's literally no way for us to look through someone else's eyes and actually see what their conscious mind sees, how their mind reconfigures and interprets the raw light wave input coming in through their pupils. Like, yes, we can agree on the objective definitions. Light between this frequency and that is red or yellow or blue or whatever. But we cannot ever know the subjective internal experience that another person has of that light frequency. Yes, this question still haunts me 30 years later. In a more general way, that unanswerable question about colors demonstrates the limitations of language. Even for concrete things, phenomena that can be sensed through our eyes, nose, ears, skin, whatever, language is still fundamentally abstract. It is not the thing itself, but a summary of it, a reduction of it to the features we have collectively decided define it as that thing and separate it from other things. While we can share biological states with others near us, such as syncing our heart rates or breathing or brain waves, we can sync our body movements or our voices, we can still only approximate the experience that they are having simultaneously to the experience we are having, because the same shared moment is being filtered on both sides by our respective pasts and internal beliefs and implicit emotional learnings and the associations that we have with different objects and different scents and different experiences. We're going to have different poles within our attention and our cognitive awareness. We're going to have different meanings that we're attributing to the experience itself and so on. We cannot ever truly understand the internal experience another person is having. Words can help us create a bridge, but they can only take us so far. We can use words in our sensory input channels to attempt to enter another person's phenomenological world, but we are limited by our capacity to set aside our own filters, and also by their capacity to accurately articulate what is happening inside them. We are limited by their ability to properly contextualize, that is, to give the salient and relevant data only, no more and no less. And we are limited by our own capacity to hold that much information at once. We are limited by our own patience with absorbing revelations and by whether we're listening to extract information or to allow an emergent image to reveal itself. This seeking to be understood, to use language not merely to communicate facts and figures, but to share our internal world, is as vexing as it is transcendent. The sacred existential way that we personally experience being human is unique. It's unique to all of us. And in many ways, it is significant only unto ourselves. We want to share that internal experience with those that we love so that they truly see us and not just the outline of us that their senses have drawn. We are limited to what we can convey with words, whether we're using them for their meaning or to tell a story. And to even get close to expressing our interiority, we need to be able to step beyond it enough to see what can and cannot be known by the person to whom we are expressing it. This seeking to be known by being understood is a very human trait. And it is something that the predictive algorithms of generative, so-called AI, models cannot replicate. Those programs do not understand anything, whether we're using my definition of that word, understand, or just my friends. The programs do not have actual cognizance. They do not comprehend the words that they parrot. They simply use massive data sets to see how often words are used in certain orders and near to other words. They speak but have no voice because there is no intention behind the characters they generate. There is no meaning, only probability. This is part of why I abjure these algorithmic iteration machines. I refuse to call that type of AI artificial intelligence because while it is certainly artificial, it is not at all intelligent. It is an algorithmic iteration. A fundamental part of being human is struggling to use the limited language that we have in order to express our deepest self. Tens of thousands of years of humans striving to make ourselves understood cannot and should not be reduced to the frequency of association. It's obscene. And beyond that, the loss to ourselves of not even attempting to articulate our inner experience is a soul wound to the collective. There will always be the poets, those black swans like me, who are impelled by an inner drive to make myself understood by those around me that literally no amount of rejection or trauma can quell. But the attempt to express our truths and our unique experience of this thing we call life and being human is the birthright of all of us. It's not something that should be reserved by those who can't not do it. We should all be trying to do it. We come to know ourselves deeply and experience more parts of ourselves, and therefore more parts of life, when we make the attempt to express our subjective point of view. The clumsiness of language makes expressing ourselves a challenge. The limited capacity of other humans to receive us makes expressing ourselves really vulnerable. But those are also what make the attempts meaningful. We care enough about ourselves to learn a skill and creatively bypass the constraints of the form that we can use in order to have self-expression. We care enough about others to risk the pain of rejection in order to receive the benediction of real acceptance. Being understood, like truly, deeply understood, is a profoundly healing experience, possibly even a spiritual one. Even for me, someone who seeks it out and has deliberately cultivated the skills that make self-expression possible, those moments of contact where I feel certain the other person truly sees what I am and what I'm experiencing are relatively few. And I am grateful every single time it happens. So, honestly, thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to absorb the words and the context I just shared and entering my phenomenological world just for a little while. I hope that it made you think or inspired you in some way or maybe comforted you. If you want to tell me about it, come over to my Patreon and leave a comment. Patreon.com/narrative responsibility. And if you want to know more about my work as a coach, you can check out thepatternbreaker.com. And until next time, what part of your story are you taking responsibility for this week?